Hello, this is Matt from The End Podcast. And what you're listening to is an excerpt from our podcast, which is available on all your favourite listening locations. All you have to do is search for Spank Media and The End Pod. Now you've already clicked play on this video. Why don't you just take it a little step further? Go into that little grey area and touch it again and just hit subscribe. You won't regret it, I will promise you, baby. All I've got to do now is hand you over to, well, me. Tim and I watched The Royal Hotel, which is another feminist banger from Kitty Green, or is it? She is known for The Assistant, which was Me Too in the office, kind of. I don't know what to call it without what film. It's a film, Tim. That's what it is. And that also starred Julie Garner. We also have Jessica Henwick, and we had Hugo Weaving. And then I'll give you my brief thoughts on the Marvels after we've talked this one up or down. So, Tim, did you enjoy this film?
I enjoyed this immensely. I thought it was very, very menacing. It maintained a level of anxiety throughout the picture. And for that reason, I really, really liked it. I thought the acting was excellent. The Dolly guy, he was truly frightening. One other thing I liked about it is if you have personal experience with alcoholism or alcohol use disorder, that adds another layer of anxiety to the whole thing. So I liked it for that reason.
I can only agree on one thing that you've just said there. I think it was very, very well acted. And I just don't think that any of the technical disciplines did any of the actors in this any favors. I think it was poorly edited. I think it had massive pacing problems. And quite the opposite. I thought it really struggled to hold tension. I don't think it knew the identity of its threat. And I don't think it, especially, I think the ending was almost from a different film, but we'll get to that. I don't think they played on suggested aspects of the characters and of the situation. And I don't think it used, and this was very, very well acted. Let's not fuck about. I mean, Julie Garner plays that twitchy, tense, reactive front foot character, almost a more timid version of what she plays in The Ozark. Easily damaged, but very reactive kind of character. Jessica Henwick played her friend. So basically, the crux of it is Jessica Henwick and Julie Garner's characters, they're in Australia. Jessica Henwick's character runs out of money, so they take a job very quickly. The only thing available is in this outback bar for this mining town where the population is pretty much zero except for the people that work there. And it's about the nuance of pursuing women, and relationships can be misinterpreted or misused. And like you said, there's a tension because not all the advances are welcome. And in this place, you've got some real shitty blokes. You've got some blokes who are either accepted or rejected. And then you have one that seems to fit into the model of their friendship quite well. So it proposes a lot with all these characters. Kitty Green is a wild feminist writer. Like I said, she did The Assistant, which was a big Me Too thing, workplace Me Too thing in a big organization. For that, she did a documentary called Ukraine is Not a Brothel. So there was a through line. I don't think this was the purpose of the film. All the characters were proposed from a different level of threat. I don't think it was meant to show the duplicity of women, that we don't want to be spoken to. We don't want unwelcome advances unless I find you attractive back. So it's kind of, we don't want to be viewed as in a sexual manner unless we want to be. Do you know what I mean? Like, there wasn't the nuance in the writing of. I also feel that there was a real opportunity to drive a wedge between the two central characters, because Jessica Henwick's a bit more free going. She embraces it. She gets what working in the bar is a little bit better. And Julie Garner's constantly going, I don't like it. I want to leave. Uncomfortable with the free and easy drinking and the sexuality of this outback bar. What I would have done if this was my film, and heaven forbid that should ever be the case, I would have driven the wedge between the two characters that makes it seem like the same events are being seen through two completely different lenses, but the characters' friendship is never really put under test. They both have their individual take on things, but it never really causes enough friction. This film really sent me the wrong way because there was a couple of really clever editing choices to suppose what kind of film this was. But again, it was kind of a bit mixed. They're in this nightclub. Jessica Henwick's card gets rejected when she goes to the bar. They exit this nightclub, and then it turns out they're on a party boat, this party yacht. And it was really clever editing. It then goes at a massive rate of knots. They're then sat in a traveler's bureau or whatever it is. Can we have a job? Yes, there's the job. It's very choppy editing. It's almost too quickly. We don't really get to know the characters enough in this initial passages of this film to really worry too much or to have any sympathy or empathy for what they're put into, because we don't really know them. One of them's a bit more responsible than the other. There's no initial character setting to any extent. So that duplicity between the two and the way that I would have driven a wedge through them wasn't really possible because they're not archetyped enough. Usually that wouldn't be a good thing, but the two characters were too similar at that point. And then they end up getting a lift to this remote part of the Australian outback in this mining village. And they're chucking their bags in the back of this like Trans Am or whatever it is. And immediately there's this big dog barking when they open it. Now that really cleverly sets the scene. You have a familiar situation where danger has been injected into it, surprisingly, unexpectedly. And I thought, wow, if this scene in itself is indicative of what's to come, then we're in for a roller coaster. But it just went on and on and on. And I never really felt they were in too much danger. I didn't feel that they were ever not going to come out of it the other side. Sorry, on the party boat, Julie Garner finds this sort of easygoing, fun-loving Nordic Scandinavian fella. She ends up having a bit of a snog and she's quite content with that. So she was happy with his advances in that setting. But when genuinely nice people at the bar, like this guy called Ty, right? Or T, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
He's rough around the edges, but he seems like nice. He's not a threat to anybody. He's just genuinely, he takes a shine to Jessica Henwick's character. But because he's rough around the edges, everybody just laughs at him. At one point, somebody actually holds up a cat. Yeah, Ty, if you want some pussy, mate, there it is, or something like that. But I would have used that wedge and the paranoia of one character against this plain day character of Jessica Henwick, that Julie Garner was getting more and more and more wound up, and she was internalizing it because Jessica Henwick's character wasn't necessarily listening to her. And then when they were fearful in the final passages, and there was one guy that was an absolute shitbag. So there's one scene where this one shitbag, he's walking up and he's drunk and he's like, "Oh, girls, where are you? Come on, let me in," sort of thing. And they see the classic trope, the feet under the door. They hide and they stay quiet, and then he moves away. I would have used that in one of the final passages of the scene with Julie Garner in the room on her own, and I would have made it so it was the Scandinavian guy, and in her complete paranoia, she ends up killing him. She opens the door and she stabs him or hits him over the head or something like that. Because this is not a long film. It's only about, what, an hour 30, an hour 40?
That's what, it's 90.
I looked at it and was like, there's 15 minutes left. There's 15 minutes left. We've got nowhere. we've like repeated themes, we've repeated scenes, we've repeated the general crux of the film 3 or 4 times over, and we've got the credits, so take 5 minutes off that. I was like, how are they going to tie this up in 10 minutes? And if they're going to do that abrupt ending, you need something to really push it home. So I think that misdirection, and then they flee the bar. Now, on the ending, Tim, and I know I've said a lot and I've not given you a chance to reply, but with the ending, they end up burning the bar down. This is shot very much like an indie film, right? Very much like an indie film, except for the opening scene and the final scene. And they end up burning the bar down, and then they're walking away without looking back, like it's the end of a Fast and Furious film. And I'm like, this just doesn't fit with everything else. I think they needed to have a real tragedy at the end of it, that internalization that Julie Garner could have gone through, and the way that she was being ignored and she felt trapped and anxious and oppressed. And that all comes out at the end, and she maybe kills the Scandinavian fellow, or even maybe she kills Jessica Henwick's character. I just felt it went nowhere quick, and it ended nowhere quick, despite it being a very quick film.
I just felt it was menacing throughout. The threat is not ever really particularly identified, but I liked that fact because you're seeing the threat, the ambient threat through the eyes of basically the Hannah character. I'm not sure what her name is. What's her name in real life?
Julia Garner. Julia Garner.
And so I liked it because you never know, just like she never knows what's a threat and what's not. And it turns out even the guys that she calls the Scandinavian guy to come pick her up and take her back to Sydney because she's fucking had it. And that Dolly guy, she's terrified of him. So she wants to get out of there. So the Scandinavian guy comes back. She's got a little thing with this other dude, a local that she hangs out with and is like made out with like once or twice. And then Liv has got this not a thing, but kind of a thing with the guy Ty.
Yeah.
And it turns out that, they're all various levels of shitbag. Like they appear nice, but especially the guy that Hannah's with, he like breaks her door down with Dolly and like tries to abduct or take Liv somewhere that I think was designed and very menaced by it. And then the Scandinavian guy calls her, I think, like a sour cunt, right? When he's all wasted.
Oh, yeah, he says, this is why they all call you the sour cunt.
Yeah. So it's like he's maybe not the best dude. And then the Thai guy, he was the closest to like a genuine friend. But at the end, when he beats up Dolly for like trying to take Liv, he smashes his car. There's a lot of like car crashes in this, sort of weird. He busts into the door and he's like, I told him that you're mine. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. So his view of it is he's like a nice guy. Like, what do you call it? A wolf in sheep's clothing type of thing. I thought it worked. And I thought that the very fact that you couldn't identify menace and what's true and what's not helped. I don't know. I liked it because it gave you that sense of anxiety and uncertainty that the main characters have.
I still think they could have played on it more, that how much of the situation is created from her actions. Because there's a couple of English girls as well, isn't there, that are there, that they're taking over from, and they seem to embrace it and they're having a wild time. Now, that's not to say that you should have to adopt a persona to fit in anywhere or accept the environment that you're in, but you are very much in the environment. And knowing that Jessica Henwick doesn't have character Liv, she doesn't have as big a problem as what Hannah does. Julia Garner's problem. And I think a part of the problem is because she is a bit of a sour cunt.
Well, I think it's because she doesn't drink. Like everyone else is getting fucked up all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point.
And because she mentions at one point that her mother was basically like an alcoholic, and so she doesn't drink, but not a lot. That gives her a sober view of things that maybe Liv doesn't have, because Liv spends the entire movie fucked up, basically. She's waiting at every turn. That's how I interpreted that. Not so much that she's innately like some kind of prude necessarily. In the first scene, she makes out with the Scandinavian guy. the role reversal is almost complete. Liv's the one that's like, can we get the fuck out of here? And Hannah's the one making out with this dude on
Yeah,
the
yeah,
party.
yeah, yeah.
So I don't think she's necessarily a prude.
I took it as exactly that. She felt, the character Hannah felt as though she was happy to be pursued on the boat because of her perception of what that person is, who ended up being a shitbag anyway. But then she was willing to give him a chance because of the environment. But then as soon as she goes to the bar, she's too good for everything. And she immediately gets everybody's backs up because she thinks that she's too good for the people and for the environment, where I think Jessica Henwick embraces it a bit more for what it is.
Hannah was reasonably anxious about the bar. You can
Yeah, yeah,
imagine when everyone's partying. I don't know how old these girls are supposed to be, like mid-20s maybe. That's a context.
yeah.
But when you get to the bar, you're in the middle of nowhere.
I was about to say exactly that, Tim. That
Yeah.
the one thing it does really well is how I talk about the boxed horror. Because she says at one point to Hugo Weaving's character, the actual bar owner, and wow, like I said, I can't criticize any of the actors in this. They all do a fucking fantastic job because they're all quite familiar, which is amazing, really, to think you managed to get Hugo Weaving, Jessica Henwick, Julia Garner in a little indie Australian film.
Yeah, yeah.
I lost the eye for the actor and just saw the character almost immediately. And Hugo Weaving, I mean, wow, almost unnoticeable. Hate him.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah. So we talked off air before we started the show that you told me that Hugo Weaving was in the movie. I was like, where? Are you kidding me? I kind of want to go back and see if I can recognize him because he doesn't look
He's
anything
unrecognizable.
Like. Yeah.
And he plays the nasty drunk so well, doesn't he? Again, there's a line early on where he says to, what are you girls doing? And she says, oh, I've got a degree and whatnot. And he goes, so you're a clever cunt, are you?
Yeah.
Goes, good, we could do with a couple of clever cunts around here. It throws them back because it's a very, very Australian and British thing to use it in a positive way. Like I always call Tim a lovely cunt.
Yeah.
He's a decent bloke and quite supportive, but he gets blackout drunk and he binge drinks. He's not continuously pissed, but he gets blackout to the point where there's a lady that comes. Is she a cleaner? She basically says to the girls, when she takes him away late in the film in the ambulance because he gets himself in such a mess, take the money out the till, take all your tips, and get the hell out of her as quickly as you possibly can.
I think she's the cook.
That's it. Yeah.
Is his name Bill? I don't even remember what his name is. And throughout the movie, like, she's telling him, pour that drink out. Don't fucking drink that. And he's like, fuck you. And he just like drinks it. And so there's that obviously long-standing conflict between them that I thought was,
yeah.
I don't know. I liked it. I can see your points, but I found myself very engaged. It felt like 20 minutes to me, not 90. So to me, it wasn't slow. I mean, it was not much happens, but I felt
that's one of my problems.
Yeah. I felt Hannah's anxiety throughout.
Oh, yeah, there's no two ways about it because it's fantastically acted. There was a really good film in here somewhere, a top-notch modern thriller. And I feel like it was squandered the opportunity of it. It's certainly not a bad film. It's easily watchable. You feel the anxiety, but felt that there was something missing. And I don't think it could get its editing sorted out as well. At times it was choppy. At other times it was like long, slow takes. I mean, you can do that, but it's something that has to be intentional. And I feel like it lost its luster. Maybe that was an editorial choice, and maybe this film was a lot longer. I think there's a 2-hour film here. And I think most of that, you put maybe 20 minutes on the beginning and about 10 minutes on the end.
Let me ask you a question. So the first time they go out, they want to go swimming and they end up in that, they're kind of sunbathing with the chairs and they're drinking boxed wine. In the background, that sounds like a scream and maybe like a gunshot or something. And they're like, oh, Hannah's like, what was that? What was that sound? And Liv's like, I'm not sure. I think she was laughing because they want to convince themselves that it's not dangerous, but it kind of sounds very, very dangerous to me. And then the British girl in the beginning, she's the one of the bartenders when they take over for them in the first third of the film. And then she gets out of town and comes back, and she's with Dolly, who I think is the real antagonist of the movie. And you can tell that she's playing it like that actor was playing it, I think, very frightened as well. So you never know what's like going on behind the scenes. And I think from the perspective of Hannah, she's a sober one in the room, like you can see how from her perspective, all the stuff like triangulating would cause her a lot of anxiety. But anyway, I liked it. I definitely think it could be better, but I would send somebody to this.
Okay, well that's the question, Tim. That is the question,
Yeah.
and you've just answered it for me. Because that's oh dear. So as we usually say, you can't 7 out of 10 watch something. You either watch it or you don't.
Yeah.
I'd still say give it a watch. I think for 90 minutes, you're not gonna feel cheated by spending it watching this film. I think again, standout acting performances. It's not a bad film by any shot. I think my own expectations probably betrayed me a little bit.
Yeah, fair.
So let's say goodbye to the people then, Tim. After you.
Goodbye, people. Ashburn, Brussels, hang in there. We're gonna try to upload every week. We're gonna try to record. We have actually a lot planned over the next like 3 months, I think.
Yeah, we have a lot. And with I know the scriptwriters' strike is over now. However, I don't think. Well, Neon and A24 have a free pass, so hopefully they'll spring up with something every now and again that we can look at. They've still got a pretty full slate. But yeah, the major studios and especially the tentpole stuff we talk about, that's probably going to be like May, June next year. But we have a bunch of cool comics that we're going to be talking about. We've scheduled Neil Gaiman month in January, and then we're going to go through a few classics in February. And I think Joe's going to join us for that. Tara's going to join us for the Neil Gaiman month. The ones we have currently slated for February are Gotham Central, Dan Slott's Silver Surfer, and Brian Michael Bendis's Alias.
Right.
So that only leaves me to say goodbye, your regular co-host, Matt. Thank you very much for listening. And again, just to remind everybody, hit subscribe, please, everybody. Or go to YouTube and follow us on there where we chop up the episodes. Just a reminder, that's the End Pod One Shots on YouTube. On Instagram and Twitter, it's the End_pod. And if you found one of those chopped up bits of content, we are the End on all your favorite listening locations, but you'll need to search Spank Media, the End. So that only leaves me one more thing to say. We have been, and this is the End.
Good to know I don't have to watch Marvels.
Yeah, you will though, won't you?
Yes, I will.